Good day. In this video, I'd like to share with you 3 scenarios when using metrics in your interview answers is not to your advantage. Okay, the first scenario I'd like to talk about here would be some of the star answers you're going to present will not have a quantifiable outcome. Okay, for example, if you're a software engineer and you have to resolve a conflict with a colleague, basically you would go around finding some data, listening to your colleague and ultimately earning their trust. And this would be the outcome of that situation. Some candidates, because of the fact that they feel like, hey, I must use metrics in my answers because I'm applying to a highly data-driven role, they go as far as to present maybe, the final outcome of that project, which maybe got delayed by 10 months, but not because of you and your colleague, just because they have to use a metric. Right, so I would like to be straightforward. This is not a good enough of a reason for you to use metrics because they're not to your advantage. Okay, or salespeople, you maybe closed the largest deal in your life, which was a major success for you, but ultimately turned out to be unprofitable for the business because of some reasons outside of your area of responsibility. No need to talk about that last part of how unprofitable it turned out to be, but rather focus on the success you bring and your ability to deal with ambiguity and whatnot. Right? So if the outcome of your project, program, or solution isn't a quantifiable one, then you shouldn't quantify it. It's as simple as that. Right? The second scenario, where you should be skeptical of using metrics in your star answers, will be in the situation. So it is good advice that you should be as specific as possible in your interview answers. There's even a star worksheet, which probably you've heard of. And you'll see right at the top, when did this happen, follow-up and challenge questions. Now, what happens is that if your story happened 10 years ago, you would not want to start with something online, say, hey, 10 years ago, while leading a team of, 5 accountants, I did this and that. Because, if it's too old of a story, it's not to your advantage. Okay, and if you go back to that star worksheet, one of the challenge questions would be, could you come up with one that is more recent? Okay, so if something happened a long time ago, too long ago, so to speak, but you still feel it's something super relevant, try only to use information that is to your advantage. That is, don't mention it was 10 years ago. Just say, while I was managing a team of 5 accountants, I did this and that, right? So in the situation this was, right? And the third scenario I'd like to share with you when it's not to your advantage to use metrics, but still too many of you do, is because some candidates prefer to present metrics they did not own. Okay, on the reason that it would make them look good during the job interview and a bit to get up leveled. For example, I once had a client who were applying for a senior PM technical at a well-known FANG business. And right in the beginning of their elevator pitch, they said, hey, my highlight in my career is when I led a fintech app, which we decided to trial on 30,000 customers of our bank. And then, they talked about how their fintech app with AI and whatnot was successful. However, he was interviewing with a senior manager who became skeptical about those 30,000 customers they decided to trial their app on. And then basically they challenged that PM, hey, how did you arrive to that 30,000 mark? And the PM was clearly bluffing on that metric, was only presenting it because it sounded good. It made them look good, and it was, the elevator pitch. And basically for the remainder of, 45 minutes of the interview, they challenged the PM on that specific metric. Okay, so needless to say, they did not pass the interview. They passed the second time, actually. Okay, so stay away from putting out there metrics you did not own because they make you look good. Because in my experience, this will rarely play to your advantage, especially in final interview rounds. And the same goes, with metrics you cannot prove. You cannot easily prove. But the core idea would be metrics you did not own, right? So long story short, If the outcome isn't quantifiable, there's no need for you to push the limits, especially if it's not to your advantage. If the situation happened a long time ago, no need to say it was 10 years ago. And if you did not own the metric, be skeptical of putting it out there, or put it, in a context so it's clear you didn't own it. Right? So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.